we're going to pick it up just a little bit, and because we have a couple more experiences that we want to engage you into those. Okay. Okay? All right. So we're going to move into another activity. Lydia's going to take us through this one. I'll just preface that. Don't get too bogged down with the size of your class, because I've seen this in relatively large classes to do.
So this is the Four Corners activity. And it lends itself well to multiple choice type answers or multiple answers. So the question that I'd like you to think about is, what is the easiest public health crisis to fix? And your choices are, number 1, border crossings, number 2, ingested plastic, 3, mad cow disease, number 4, bird flu. So not only do you have some like really bizarre things that could lend themselves well to controversial topics, but what I want you to do is, we've got 4 corners. We have number 1 over here, 2 is against this window, number 4 and number 3. I'd like for you to, using your knowledge of these issues, choose which one you think is going to be the easiest fix and go to that corner. When you're there, we're going to ask you to explain why you chose that position and what is the science behind it, what is the public health context that fits it. If you don't have a public health context or know the science, use as much of an informed opinion as you possibly can. Any questions? And then we're going to come back and debrief after that. So what, in your opinion, informed opinion, is the easiest thing to fix of the? Choose a corner. Get up and move. So do you think 1, 2, 3, or 4? Of these, yes. We've got number 1, border crossing deaths as an easy to fix, ingested plastics, mad cow, and bird flu. Yeah. So let's have a conversation as to why you chose that position and why are these easy to fix in your opinion? Why is that position, what is the easy fix for you? What is the solution?
Amongst each other?
You can talk for 1 minute amongst yourself, but we're going to...
Yeah. When as you're talking in with yourself, just justifying that you made a very good decision.
Yes. We know the flu exists, but we haven't used it.
Okay. Let's come back. So we're going to recenter, and we'll start off with our lone thinker, mad cow disease.
Well, there's 2 of us. But
2. Nate, you joined them. Great. Our 2 people.
Okay. Well, this is more that it was not an easy public health fix, but it was one that required the least political of a solution. So that's the only reason I picked it, because I think I guess more of an American public health issue, whereas the others currently, I think, especially 1 and 2, it's more the challenge of the political will needed to address it.
Very good. And number 4, bird flu.
I just we decided we came here because we know that we have the flu and we have vaccines to combat it, so we figured that there would be a somewhat relatively simple solution to fixing those.
We also have long-standing protocol for reacting to epidemics and pandemics, and know the steps to quickly react and to isolate and to kill the birds, or so that's simple. And people, don't kill the people.
That's never a good choice, and that's not one of ours. So, what are any misconceptions you might think people have related to how easy it is to fix mad cow disease? I loosely use the term fix. Do you think people have any misconceptions about some of the topics you just talked about, like vaccinations in general?
No, the vaccine, the thing on H1N1 that we may not have the vaccine at the time, that we may have to react quickly, and I think public misperceives everything public health does, but
Yeah, I mean, that is true. There could be some misconceptions, but I still think the vast majority of people are on board with that, at least to my knowledge.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Number 2?
Yeah, we thought we can get rid of all plastics. We can stop using it, recycle if we have to use it, or create a new biodegradable material.
Sounds good. Do you have examples of places where getting rid of it has actually worked or not worked?
Well, getting rid of it altogether, no, there's no place on earth that have done that, but minimizing it, places like Germany, for example, they recycle about 60%, whereas we cycle only 20-30%. And there are, I think, for example, Germany now does not have any waste anymore. They even import waste to recycle it.
Okay,
So that can be good examples as well.
very good. Anything related to number 1? What are your, why did you choose number 1?
We focused on the easiest, and so we said, yeah, just open the borders.
Okay. So what are the
You're running for president. I vote for you.
It wasn't a political leaning, it was just a, which one's easiest? So I focused on easiest and said, there, that's an easy thing. Whereas the rest of them seem to have lots of steps.
and how many cases are we talking about too in that situation compared to, you're right, I mean, compared to.
Very good.
You're
So-
quantitative, Dr.
I know. I lack any emotion.
And sometimes that's a great place to be in too. No, some things are black and white, So this is the Four Corners activity. It makes people make a choice, and it should be through an informed opinion. It gets people up and engaged in different areas, up out of their seat. And so those people that might not necessarily want to speak when you're calling on them, it's a way to make them get up and actually participate in the conversations in different ways. It's anytime you can engage your students in a different way, it's going to capture their attention a little bit. And something like this could easily translate to online through having 4 discussion boards or having 4 different groups come together, have conversations, and then come back to the whole and essentially defend their position and or answer questions related to why they chose what they chose.
This is a great one for policy class.
Yeah. Absolutely. And this is, very broad, meant to be somewhat of a superficial type of question that anybody could kind of make an opinion on. But you can get into a very simple, if you're teaching math, what's 2 + 2, and then you can have 5 different answers and
Alternative.
you can have alternative answers, and you can make people explain how do you come about that. Did you, come up to 4 because you
Are smart.
are adding 1 + 1 + 1 + 1? Did you use your 4 fingers? Did you have to use your toes? Again, I'm being a little facetious and light, but it could be very factual, or it could be something that allows itself for a greater conversation. Any questions about the context or the use of this activity? Okay.
Okay, what I like to do when I'm using this, also, Lydia made reference this earlier, in that you can, in your planning, you can change the criteria, in that while they're in their different areas, and this is what I tend to do, is I want to hear 2 references to the reading assignment, for example. Because I want them to go more of, well, I think, because I tell sometimes my folks, you don't need this class to have an opinion. You are humanly able to do that on your own. What I want you to do is take the reading material and make sense of it. So which of these corners would you stand in? Sometimes more than one corner might be a viable solution, or could be 3, could be all of them. It might be all of them have serious shortcomings, but this is what we're thinking about. So that's another way to, like raise the level of critical thinking, plus getting them to tighten up on those connections.
Okay. Thank y'all very much for participating in this. We're moving into another activity called peer carding. And you can have a seat real quick. Nate's going to pass out an article real quick. You would actually have an assigned reading in advance or assigned assignment or activity in advance. And we're going to give you a minute to real quickly read through an article. What we would like for you to do is to then formulate a question for conversation or discussion with each other. We're going to, actually, for the sake of time, we're just going to call on 1 or 2 people once you read through this article. And you will you will ask the question to the entire group and come to an answer as a group. Does that make sense? Okay.
Now, this doesn't have specific public health content necessarily, but does relate to our pedagogy that we use.
Yes.
So this actually will help. You're talking about students who are not prepared for their readings. This makes them come prepared a little bit. You would provide some sort of grading scale point to this activity. They have to come with the questions already written out in advance.
Okay, so you may have started writing a question on this. Just a little bit of background on this one. I was looking for a way to engage my students so that they were more active in my classes, because I was getting kind of tired that it seemed like I was doing so much talking and so forth. They were polite, nodding their head, yes. But they weren't really taking that much away from class either. And I would overhear people say, well, Dr. Carnes said, da-da-da-da. And I was like, oh, but what are you gaining? And it was pretty much what you said, So I ran across this article called Peer Carding. I'm happy to share it with you. I've done some modification of it and am getting ready to write a subsequent article on how I used it. The feedback that I'm getting, I got over the last few years, including now, is that the students really like it. And they find it more useful. By the way, I don't have much of an attendance problem using peer carding, because you got to be present. They write their question and they submit it through Blackboard, because I'm in a face-to-face class. It can be done online, pretty easily. And so they write the question and then they submit it, or there are different options, as you can see here. For the face-to-face, we can meet in small groups. I would say 5 in a group is the largest that I would do. It could be generally like 4, so sometimes 2 or 3 is a little too small. And then in this context, or this option, they each will just share and read from the card in their small group. I appoint someone to then report out on how the group did when we come back together. They'll find there's no refereeing at the very beginning, so sometimes they might come with, let's say, 3 out of 5 people ask pretty much the same question. Well, we debrief about that. So what is that telling us, from the reading assignment, so forth. So that's one case. Another case is they have to come to class with their peer card question, or they can submit it online. And if they submit it online, I would just give myself some time to gather the questions and mix them up randomly and all, and then I use them in the class and ask them the questions. They are the ones who came up with the questions, not me. And then another is that you can have them come to class with their peer cards, which is like this, and what they have to do then, I just give them a moment or two to exchange. You exchange randomly, and then I will call on different students who will then read the question from the card and take over, engage the class. They become the instructor for the time being. And to keep it live, keep it real, keep it authentic, and focused on the content. Okay? I have found, this is what I grabbed from the article, I have found also that it worked better to put some kind of, lack of a better word, stipulations on it, and that, this is posted in my assignment. This is an ongoing assignment. It goes with reading. You know, you have to read the assignment. Well, this goes with, along with that, only they earn points on submitting the card. And I just had this short little rubric that I use with them, that one, it cannot be a yes or no question. It's got to be an open-ended question, because yes or no does not lend itself well, not that it doesn't altogether, but it doesn't lend itself well to discussion. So I put that on. Another criterion I use is the question must be related to the reading assignment. Okay? I have a third one. This is where we are now. The class who met yesterday, this is what they're going through. They also have to ask a question that does not limit itself to opinion only, because I want them to grab the essence of the reading material. So it can be, so what do you think? Do you agree with? No, it has to go on beyond that. It can be a two-part question. You can start there, but at the end, you have to then dig into the meat of the reading assignment. Okay. Another one that I have imposed on them is that that you have to provide a context for your question. So, and I operationalize that to be, they have to make specific reference to the reading assignment, you know, in some sort of context. Okay, and this has helped raise the level of quality of the questions.
Can I just bring something up, because it relates to foreign students and different learning styles. And I've seen this a lot in my work, but it suddenly strikes me now, you know, there are some cultures that are less likely to question
Yes.
the faculty or engage in discussion, plus there's language and writing issues. So I just wanted to like bring that up as all of, you know, all these discussions, how can we adapt some of this to encourage participation from those who feel uncomfortable because of language barriers or cultural barriers?
That's a perfect one, because with the peer card, the questions are coming from the peers. And so in some cultures, peers are viewed differently than the instructor, because the instructor is the authority figure and you dare not do that. So this would be a good alternative for a situation like that.
And also, even if you have a face-to-face class, there's nothing that says you can't flip it a little bit and have online conversations, online discussions, even in your face-to-face class. And especially if you know that you have some challenges in the classroom, that lends itself well. And there are other alternatives too, you know, not just in the classroom itself. There are technologies that you can use that might help facilitate that a little bit better to make them a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah. So I've been living by this. They earn points. The points aren't really difficult to get, but then they said, I mean, we've had some very rich discussions and so forth. I had a hard time stopping them yesterday. It's like, hey y'all, we're running out of time.
So,
but they were into it.
Speaking of that, let's have one person demo their question, and then we'll wrap up this activity.
Oh, what questions did you come up with?
One person, Want to share the question that they had concerning the article? I'm looking at you.
Yeah, I was like, what person would have shared that? That's me. Okay, so, all right, so I didn't get through it all, but as a student, do you prefer to really learn or just pass? Explain your answer.
That's very good. That's very, very good.
Okay, and in your case, didn't you write more than one question? Or did you just write one question? Oh, okay. Okay, so in that case, this is quick. So I always, for the assignment, you must have at least one question. Some people exceed that because like, what, I have a question on this and this one, this one. That's okay. Just as long as you meant, yeah, you can ask. Go ahead.
What are the author's main points? Have you seen this to be true? And let's brainstorm possible solutions to this issue.
That's very good. That's very good.
Now your last one, sometimes they do that. I do not penalize because your last one wasn't really a discussion question, but certainly a discussion point.
Well, it's a discussion question, but phrased in a way that's
Oh.
inclusive. I guess that's, you know, 'cause I
Yeah.
can say what are possible solutions.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Very cool. What do you think about the peer partying technique? Something that you could possibly do? Okay. Any questions related to it? Well, we want Lucy.
Yeah, just a point, I've done something similar to that, and I've moved away from that as the class has gotten larger. And just thinking about how we introduced ourselves, that probably is one of the more uncomfortable activities because you have no idea what you're gonna get, right? So it really optimizes that thinking on your feet or being respectful or, you know, because there is such room for error. And a slight adjustment that I would do is I'd have them submit them like the night before, or like I'd have time to have reviewed them, and maybe I'd have ones that I could highlight and ones I won't highlight.
Very good.
My contrast. But yeah, so that's probably one that I'm not as adept at thinking on my feet, so that's one that as a class has gotten larger, I've just kind of moved away from that. But I like this nuance.
Thanks for sharing your lessons learned. Yeah. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Another activity we wanted to quickly talk to you about is something called the line activity.
Yeah, we're just going to run through this one. I mean, just kind of a little bit about this one. What I set this up. We have, okay, for this one, we have, we have already, we're pretending, we've already done, no, this one goes over here. We've already done the, yeah, that's okay. We've already done the reading assignment, and we're now gathered together, and this is a controversial topic, and so
Okay. Okay.
I haven't really shared this one with Lydia till now, so okay. And what I do, you know, this is where I'm a little dramatic. I use my class, you know, the whole class. And so on one wall, I know it's on chair, but on one wall I put one response and then the other continuum on the other. So just pretend like this is all the way to the wall. This is spread out across the classroom. And so I ask the question. I'll ask a question. For example, I use this in my science methods course, so I'll give you one of the questions there. They have read the assignment about the nature of science, which is a very important concept in science education. So just to see where they are in their understanding, I will say, okay, I want to know, as a 10th grade biology teacher, I want to know if I should teach creationism and evolution. Okay, that's a hot topic, right? Okay, so I want you to stand to show your position. If you stand against this wall, you strongly disagree that evolution and creationism should be taught. This means you strongly agree. So if you touch the wall, you strongly agree. If you're conflicted, you will be standing closer to the line on either side. Okay? Now, sometimes I'll have the string low enough that if people are appropriately dressed, they could even straddle the line. Yeah. Yeah. okay? And so they go ahead and take their positions, and then I say, okay, now, I just want you to think about it. So we're going back to that same sequence. So I just want you to think about, why are you standing where you are standing? And I want you to be as persuasive as you possibly can to remain standing where you are. Okay? This means I should hear some references to the reading assignment. And then we go ahead and stand, people take their places, and then we take samples. And everybody may not give their position or explain their position, but they then go ahead and talk about it. I do not evaluate them, except I ask clarifying questions. That's helping to keep the discussion going and to be informative and authentic, so, and to keep the emotions down as well. Okay? And one variation to it is when people have offered their positions, then I'll say, okay, based on our discussion, would anybody like to change their position? And then we go through that. And so by the end, we have people thinking. They're like, well, I read the assignment, or somebody's like, you know what? I don't think I really understood this point. And sometimes what I'll do, I'll direct them to appear. It's like, well, can anybody answer that? And I just serve as facilitator. Yes, sir.
What if all the students will stick on that wall and done? That's what typically happens in controversial issues. They would just go on one side, which is the mainstream, and stick into that side. What do you do in this case?
Same thing. I have them explain, and then what I will do is start asking questions as if I'm on this side, and then I will try to persuade them.
Right.
And so they said, "You mean you believe that?" I'm just saying. What if? Then they kind of get the idea. Well, then they say, I don't know if he believes that or not, but he's now suggested some things, and I try to be as persuasive as possible. And what generally happens is I get a scattergram.
Yeah, they typically go on one side. I tried that before, not the line exactly, but I tried to divide them and then create that discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But, well, climate change, denier or believer. And then they are all believers. There are no deniers.
Well, see, I'm a little bit of a troublemaker at times, and so I just become adversive. Respectful.
Yeah.
But doing that, they can see where you can respectfully disagree.
Yeah.
Because, believe it or not, they are watching us, and they adopt some of our behaviors. So.
Another policy class option.
Artificial intelligence, yes, it's coming, y'all. It's already here. So thank y'all very much. We wanted to really quickly share some tips for effective group discussions. And some of the, knowing in advance what they are, keeping everything connected to your learning objective for the day, for your activity for the day. Creating that safe environment is also very, very important, especially with difficult conversations. Especially here at the university, we have the Carolinian Creed too, that as a faculty, staff, and student, we're supposed to abide by. So, especially in online learning, we reference that at the beginning of class too. But one thing we want to also make sure of, and Nate referenced it a little bit, but making sure to watch your reactions. You want to try and facilitate, not necessarily persuade based on your personal perspective. It's okay to have opinions of yourself, but sometimes is this the environment? What's the point of your injecting your opinion and your reaction in the class? So it's very, very hard not to, especially with some of these. But you want to try. Sometimes when we're injecting our opinion, it stops somebody else from having a contradictory opinion. And it's important that everybody's opinion is informed and respected too. So, but they also try and sometimes emulate or reflect back what we're saying, and we don't necessarily want that to happen. We want them to be able to think for themselves and think critically. Reflection is a big piece of everything that we do. And facilitation skills. There are resources out there that will help hone facilitation skills. The Community Toolbox out of the University of Kansas has some really great tips and suggestions on how to facilitate grouping, and especially community conversations, but there's some really great resources related to that. Online learning and facilitation, but I'm going to back up a second. Facilitation is a skill that you've got to develop, and it takes time and practice, and coming out of our comfort zone to trying something new in the classroom is part of the first steps to having that happen. Getting back onto the translating from face-to-face to online. When we're working with somebody who has been teaching online, teaching face-to-face, as an instructional designer, I try and walk with them through what they're currently doing in the classroom. What is it that is effective? What isn't effective? What is it you want to try and translate to the online environment? And we help walk through what those questions are that are really good in the face-to-face class, and see how we could tweak them to the online world. We look at student-to-student interaction requirements, and then we look at what tools to use. And creating rubrics is also very important in the online environment, as it then sets the expectations and lets students know what the how they're going to be successful in the class. Different scenarios for online discussions. There's a plethora more. If you're interested in translating what you're doing face-to-face to online, or if you're currently teaching online and want to tweak what you're doing a little bit, please feel free to call us at CTE, and we'll set up a one-on-one consultation to go into more depth with that. Is there anything that y'all are doing that might be a little different than what's listed on the board? Okay.
Just before we leave it too far, going back, Lydia mentioned about doing things, new. One thing that I profited from is it might be a little card, it could be a Padlet, it could be an exit slip in which I thoughtfully ask them an evaluation question on the activity, maybe one of these activities, and get their input on what they took away, how they felt, whatever. So I then use that data to kind of like perfect.
Very cool. And that ties back into that reflection piece that's important too. And one of the biggest differences between face-to-face and online are the tools that you use, and whether or not you're trying to have conversations in real time, which are called synchronous discussions, or asynchronous, which means they occur at different times for students than when you're present. And some of the different tools, you've got the basic Blackboard forum, discussion board. VoiceThread is a really cool built-in tool. It would be really, really good for any class, but if you're doing languages online, VoiceThread allows students to either type their comments, videotape themselves, or record themselves and upload their response. And Blackboard Collaborate is a brand new web conferencing tool that is much more advanced than Adobe Connect. It's a little bit more modern, but it's the same concept. You have whiteboards, yes. There's a tool connection within Blackboard for VoiceThread, and if you connect on it through Blackboard, through your Blackboard course, it creates a free account for you, connected to your USC email address and password, so you have a single sign-on. This is Adobe Connect, Twitter, Skype. So you can even use social media to have conversations, although a little bit of abbreviated, but outside of the classroom to connect back in. Some people have Twitter chats that they set a specific time. They have facilitated questions that are already preformed. So they have their class It starts at top of the hour. They have students respond for 15 minutes on question number 1. They ask question number 2, give them another 15 minutes, and so they're able to communicate in real time on whatever the conversation is, but through social media.
Like online office hours, or people can come in and discuss something. I was invited. It's not often, it's never been used. I mean, these things, but it seems like you can't require people to come together at a specific time, right?
It's definitely much more of a challenge in how you market your class and how you have classes as a program overall. There are classes that are considered blended for 1%, and it's still online, but they require students to, I'm working with somebody now who is in a dance class, and they require students to perform, to attend live performances. And so they're 5% blended, but it is how you market and how you notify students and whether or not you are going to be synchronous and asynchronous. So giving students the option is yeah, a lot of times dependent upon the class and how, the tools that are being used, that could really inspire some people. Yes.
I was going to say, I use Blackboard Collaborative. Very, very easy. I'm not technically gifted at all. And right when I figure something out, something changes. So it hasn't changed as of yet for a while. But I do, on my online classes, I learned from CTE folks that I have my certain days a week that I have opportunities for students to, get with me office hours, but also, but Blackboard Collaborative, I posted at the beginning of the year. It stays there, the same link. So like every Thursday, I say from 2 to 4 Eastern time, they call in, I get on, and I wait to see somebody come on.
Nobody does. Nobody ever comes on.
Well, I've had a few that come in, and then I like Blackboard Collaborative is because when they come in, when another student comes in, they can hear.
Right.
What
That's
the
what,
other,
that's what I hope to have. That's
And some instructors still have 100% online asynchronous, and they offer optional class times, not just, so it's truly not. Giving them options through doodle polls or setting times at the beginning of the class, to get the most number of people who can attend is also a great option. But you can also record those sessions and post it for those students that aren't there. And so there are, ComD, for instance, it does a really great job of having these optional, I don't want to call them lectures, but interaction times with instructors, and so they record. It is completely optional for their students, but it's another way to try and engage. A lot of times, feedback I'm getting for a lot of instructors, you'll see more students right before exams, especially with undergrads. So,
And it's not a requirement. I just give that to them because, as they're developing their health promotion program, as they're doing the different phases of the framework, those that are really interested will contact me and say, those that are not, I'm assuming that they're doing okay, and I'll grade them when their stuff comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I use a community assessment where they actually have to do steps along, but they haven't. But that's what they tend to show up at my office instead. I guess.
I see what you're saying.
Right. If they're in town, they're.
Building, again, coming back to building community and providing options for students is a great idea. So, any other questions related to online learning real quickly? Okay. So let's talk a little bit, and it's our final activity of how can you apply it to your classroom. So you have a card in front of you. I wanted you to take a couple of minutes and write out your answer to the prompt, and then we'll debrief at the end. So the question is, what are important ideas from this presentation, from today, and how will you use them in your class? Okay, so let's talk about this. Would anybody like to share one idea that they'd like to walk away with, try and implement? It's okay if you don't. You want to tell us we're completely awful? You're free to tell us that also.
I think focus on building community was a really important piece of this. Just that example you said of when you talk to people you know all the time, but when you don't know, I think that can procure a lot of areas for facilitating discussions. So good.
It helps create that safe environment. Awesome. Yes.
I have several concrete ideas, but one of the ones that I think will work very well is like my students show up to class and they say that, well, I didn't like this movie, and they're not, used to French movies, but everyone, it dies at the end. So, but there are just those who say that, well, we liked it too. So one way to separate them is that, okay, those, create like a small continuum and say that those who didn't like go to this end, to this side, and those who liked, and then people who liked it come up with what they liked about the movie, and those who didn't come up with like alternative endings.
Oh, very creative. Very cool. Very cool. Thank you. Awesome. Well, if that's it, we'd like to thank y'all very much. We'd like to know if y'all have any final questions for us. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I was just curious, maybe from your experience or anybody in the room's experience, if you found any of these strategies to be more or less effective with undergraduates versus graduate students, or just because undergraduates maybe there's going to be more classes they're taking because it fits a general education requirement or some kind of requirement versus graduate students who may have a little bit different motivation for taking courses. So I was just curious if certain strategies work better or worse for different groups.
The line activity I've done with undergraduate and graduate, the success has been the topic and how I frame it. So I mean that's kind of loosey-goosey, but that's been the telling part there. The peer carding, I've gotten applause from both undergrads. Actually, even this semester, I'm teaching freshmen for the first time in my life. So I mean, I'm catching up to a veteran here. And I was like, I don't know how well this is going to go. And I've gone around and asked, and they said, oh yeah, this makes class worth coming to. Oh, I'm learning so much. I said, you are? What are you learning? Because I don't want just to tell me something. And what they give me is like, I couldn't have taught this better myself. So
I would just say that, because when I went to teach it at first, I was thinking, coming recently out of grad school, this would be really easy to do discussion-based things. Now it's not so much the case. I think you might just have to do a little more preparing and thinking about where their mindset's at and where you're trying to get them at. So maybe just more on the front end, I guess.
I think what we've talked about too is, and this is true for graduate students as well, but we find better ways to communicate with them because emails get lost in it. I mean, I have a son who's a sophomore here, and he's like, oh, I never read my emails. And I said that to Zach, oh yeah, that's what those students in U101, and I've seen that too. So, how do we better, and we know when we're teaching undergrads that we probably have less luck in getting emails through them.
Well, and one thing we online always say is send an announcement and never have it date restricted. So you tell them to go to Blackboard. But a lot of faculty members are using alternative ways to communicate. GroupMe, what is the other big common texter? Yeah, most of no, you don't Snapchat your students. Do not Snapchat your students. Nobody uses Facebook, but yeah. So there are alternative ways that instructors are finding to really communicate and many different options. Not necessarily unfortunately, but meeting them where they are sometimes. So. Any final questions as we wrap up? Well, we wanted to thank y'all very much for your time. Here is our contact information, emails. If you want to meet about your class one-on-one, I'll be glad to do so. So just send me an email and we'll have a consultation to talk about what you're doing in your class one-on-one and talk about how you can either introduce some different techniques. If you want some other different techniques, there are thousands upon them that we can talk about and fine tune for your needs. Thank you very much for having us.
Also, a workshop evaluation form we would love for you to fill out because we would love to have your feedback. Lydia was just mentioning about the different ways of, alternative ways of communicating with the students. Well, we also have alternative ways for you to stay involved with us. This is our little social media card. We encourage you to take this with us. And we're interested in seeing you on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, joining our, our different pages. We have a Facebook page, etc. So you're more than welcome to join us there. The Goldenrod has our upcoming, in addition to coming here, our events at CTE. Avail yourself of those. And
don't forget to register for the EdTech Showcase. It's completely free. It's on the 29th of March. We have some great speakers. We have some EdTech vendors that are going to come in, Microsoft, Blackboard, some other cool tools out there. But we've solicited proposals from faculty on campus to talk about what they're doing in their classroom. So you can hear about what's actually happening across USC in terms of use of technology.
And lunch is being served, and that's free also.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.